separate paths. One is like the super technical, and
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Startup Week Boston 2025. If you didn't know, this is our 9th year of Startup Boston, and I love this event. I live in Rhode Island, and I actually get an Airbnb and stay here all week because I love this event so much. So the mission of the conference is simple. It's to bring people together across the entire startup community. So in every industry, every department, every funding stage. Startup Boston exists to connect, educate, and celebrate this ecosystem while serving as a trusted, unbiased guide to the best resources that can help you start and scale your startup. My name is Linda Brown, and I'll be your host today. I have been through 3 successful exits and 4 other M&A events. I'm a serial startup person. I just love people who think like this and love a little chaos. So I'm glad you're all here with me in that love of chaos. Before we kick things off, I did want to say a huge thanks to Suffolk University for hosting our conference. If you're interested in exploring entrepreneurship, they offer a variety of programs and opportunities. They have a table in the vendor hall on the 5th floor if you want to investigate more. Also tonight, we have an event here in this room at 6:30. So we ask you to join us for that. And I wrote down the sponsors somewhere. Oh, it's because I was supposed to say it at the end. It's HPE and NVIDIA. So I'll say that again at the end of our session. So with that, I'll let things proceed, and I will hand things off to Kat, who's going to be our moderator for this discussion. Thank you.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kat Lizelle, not Jimmy. Sorry to disappoint, but I am the Senior Program Manager for the Cambridge Innovation Center's Social Impact Program. So we help underrepresented founders in Massachusetts scale their businesses. And mentorship has been a really critical piece of our program, as I know it is for many who are building right now. And we're really lucky that we're in Boston. There's a lot of people who are willing to lend their support and their advice and their mentorship. So really excited to facilitate this discussion this morning. We want this to be really conversational, so I have some questions, but we also want to leave a lot of time for Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, there will be ample opportunity to ask them. And I want to start by having our panelists introduce themselves. So maybe you can quickly intro yourself, and then also to kind of ground our discussion, say how mentorship factors into maybe your journey to the role that you're in now or into the work that you do. Let's start with Shireen.
Hi, I'm Shireen Shermack. I'm the COO of Dance AI, a neuroscience biomarker startup. And I have also been an EIR at HBS and done other straight up mentoring, but most of what I do is help founders spin out of universities. The last 3 companies that I've done, one was a cryptography company spinning out of BU, and I met that team when I was just mentoring the 2 guys who were thinking about spinning out, and they asked me to co-found with them. That happened again a couple of years later after that company was acquired with a group coming out of MIT, where they came into my office hours as an EIR, and I ended up helping them co-found the quantum computing company. And then this most recent one, I offered my hours as a mentor at Duke and ended up as COO of Dance.
Awesome. I'm John Harthorn. I'm the founder and managing director of a venture fund called Two Lanterns Venture Capital. We're a seed stage investor in software AI startups in the US and Israel. We just finished Fund 1 and are on Fund 2 now, and it's going great. Prior to this, I was the founder and longtime CEO of Mass Challenge, the startup accelerator. Ran that for about a decade. And before that, I was at Bain & Company for a couple of years. Before that, at business school, and before that, at a couple of different startups, small businesses, mostly in the Boston area. And I would say I have always benefited greatly from mentors. I am like an extrovert, so I think by speaking, and I need to have people to bounce ideas off of, ideally really smart people, smarter than me, that can give me really good feedback and tell me when my ideas are stupid, which they often are, or when they're genius, which they occasionally are. And I will, as we develop this, my key point of advocacy for mentors is I like to have dozens of mentors, and not really in a super formal. You don't just need one hardcore, you're signed up as my permanent life mentor, but I look to different people for different things. Some people have an incredible moral compass, and I look to them when I have an ethical challenge. Some people are great at HR knowledge. Some people are really good at sales or other stuff. So I basically categorize them into a whole bunch of things, and it's been like, I mean, I would say I owe 90% of my career to the mentors and people that I've surrounded myself with. So super important.
Great to meet you all. I'm Yossi. I'm the managing director for Wix Ventures, which is the investment arm for Wix.com. I came here to study at MIT around 3 years ago and decided to stay because Boston is great, and it's great to be here with all the Boston ecosystem. I'm also serving as entrepreneur in residence for MIT DesignX still, alongside investing in startup as part of my work at Wix. Working with students a lot. This is what I love. I mentor them. But as John said, I also looking for mentors all the time for different parts in my life, both personal and also, for my work stuff. So yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. So maybe, John, starting with you and thinking about how you evaluate different types of mentors for the work that you're doing, how do founders identify the right mentors or advisors for the specific needs that they have?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is that similar to sort of like raising money, it is like when you approach people, try not to treat them as a means to an end for yourself, but treat them as an end in and of themselves. And you have to kind of get to know them as a person, and not all of them will be a good fit for you. So it's also in your own interest to kind of interview them and figure out who they are. So first, I think it's approaching people as humans and as other people, and ask them a lot of questions about themselves and what are they interested in. So when we launched Mass Challenge, as an example, this is, I think, is sort of grounded in reality. When we launched Mass Challenge, we had this crazy idea that we're going to launch the largest ever startup competition. We're going to catalyze a startup renaissance and grow our way out of the great financial crisis by creating lots and lots of companies at scale that would create jobs and growth and optimism and hope. And we really had no idea what we were doing. Just to be honest, the only thing you know for certainty about an early stage business plan is that it is wrong. Like that is like the definite truth that you know for sure. And that's always the case. So that's okay. So what we did was we put down our best guess, and then we just started pitching as many people as would listen to us, starting with people that weren't even necessarily appropriate, but just would give us a meeting. It's fine. And then we asked everybody, can you name 5 other people we should meet with? So we just like played the field, and then you find some people that like they light up. There's a spark in their eyes. They get excited. They give you good feedback, and then you just stay with them. So for me, honestly, I don't know that it's the most strategic or efficient model, but I just like blast the field, talk to as many people as I can, and then I identify the 5, 10 people that I like the most, that I thought had good ideas, and you'll start to see that they're in different categories. Like this person was a really good networker, so they mentioned 10 other people we should talk to. This person had really good strategic insight as to where our business plan was dumb and where it was smart and how we could modify it. Another person had good ideas for how to raise money or change the pricing or whatever. And so you just start to kind of categorize them. And I took really intricate notes, and then just followed up with people and said, hey, you gave me great advice on this, that, and the other thing. Now I've reached a new milestone and I need new advice. Would you mind taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes to meet with me and give me more advice? And I think I just let it evolve organically. It's much harder to be like, hey, I met you at this event. Will you be my mentor for life? It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know who you are, right? So it is an interplay, and I would say just really get to know people. Treat just as you would want people to treat you. Treat them and ask them, like, what are your interests? We did another good tip that we did really early on was in an early meeting with people that you think you want to work with, you should try to let them talk more than half the time. Like, ask a lot of questions. What are your interests in life? What made you successful to date? What are your goals for the next 5 years? What are your biggest fears? What are your hopes for the next 5 years? How will you know if you're successful in a year from now? What metrics are you striving for? What types of people you're trying to surround yourself with, whatever, and take notes and then help them. It's a kind of a shitty thing, but it's true. When you're just starting out and you're sort of nobody and you haven't built anything yet, you kind of got to help a lot of other people that are already more established than you for a while, but that endears you to them by doing doing favors, and it builds a network of support, and then they will help you back. And then you can ask them for favors, and people love actually to be asked for favors, especially if they've already got a positive feel for you. So just treat people like humans, learn about them, and then kind of slot them into categories and try to add value for them while you're also deriving value.
I can just say that he walks the talk, because when I graduated from MIT and started the VC, that was really new to me, especially in the Boston area. And one of the person that I reached out to was actually sitting next to me. And he was kind enough to sit with me and actually talk to me about his, history, experience, how we build Mass Challenge, and also open his network to me, which I, still thankful for, because I feel like making more connections. You want people that are not just, well experienced, but also great people that will see eye to eye with you, not patronize you. I think this is also part of, choosing the right mentors. It's not just about their LinkedIn profile, right? You also need it's kind of like a founder choosing a VC, and it's not just VC choosing the founders. I feel like if you're a founder and you're looking for a VC, you also need to talk not just to VCs, but also with other founders to make sure that they're aligned with you, aligned with your values, that you can actually have a great connection. And I feel like it's not just about the experience, it's not just about that. It's also very, it's something that's truly between people and the network. So,
Yeah, I guess I just compliment John's comments with the introvert's perspective on how to get this done. So I don't like going out to lunches with people and trying to sell them on the thing that I'm doing, and it's very hard for me to do the things that John does so well. What I like about Boston is that there are so many formal programs where you can actually talk to somebody in the context of something they've already committed to. So I was an entrepreneur in residence at HBS. Yossi's at Sloan. I'm sure you have office hours for your fund. So there are a lot of ways to get in touch with people that they've already kind of put out there that you can just step into. And when I've committed to an hour, with you on the EIR path, I'm going to spend that hour purely focused on you. And the goal of the meeting isn't necessarily for me to become a mentor, but for me to be a mentor for that moment about fundraising or something else that you have questions for me on. So I also think it's important to think about the type of mentorship or advisorship that you're looking for. I think, for advisor stuff, there's sort of three flavors. There's the advisors that are just going to be like a mutual relationship that you chat with. They're an entrepreneur in residence or something like that, and it's kind of for free. And then if you have a startup and you're looking to add advisors as a way of adding value to the startup, there's the kind of advisors that you pay with money, and there's the kind of advisors that you pay with stock. And the kind of advisors you pay with money is usually like your lawyers or people who are experts in a particular narrow thing that you're not particularly good at, maybe even operations or compliance. The kind you compensate with stock are usually the ones who have broad experience, who've been an operator before, hopefully, and who can help you with the growth path and aren't really in a specific function like that.
That dovetails well into my next question, which is, okay, so you have maybe someone that you want to work with. How would you go about successfully onboarding advisors or mentors into your startup? And does that differ, I guess, depending on how you're compensating them?
I think it usually starts with an advisor starts with a social relationship and they're interested in your company, and you have a couple conversations where you're just getting maybe an hour or two of more or less free mentorship. And I think what John said and what Yossi said is right. You have to let them dominate the conversation for those first couple of hours and see how much they bring to the table. And if you think they're bringing a lot to the table and there would be a big benefit for you all to work together, then you can start talking about, okay, well, maybe for the next, would you be interested in being our advisor to this company while we're in pre-seed, so for the next 2 years, and come up with some kind of structural agreement. Usually you're compensating people with options at that kind of situation. And it's super helpful because you're getting the advice and the mentorship, and their networks start to become attached to your network, which as a startup founder, that can be the most important part. Not just the advice they give you, but are they willing to make phone calls for you?
Yeah, I think likewise. And I would say for people just getting started out, often the most daunting element is what do I do first? Like it's sort of like if you're starting a book or writing something and you have a blank page is the scariest part, right? What's the first step? So we started with people that we knew. So we went to, I was, when we started Mass Challenge, I'm thinking, so my co-founder was an HBS grad, I was a Sloan grad. So we just went back to our professors, to the people that ran the Entrepreneurship Center, people we had already worked with that knew us, had a reasonable level of respect for us. And then we pitched them on the idea and asked for advice. Just like, what do you think? Is this dumb? Is it smart? Who else should we talk to? And then they sort of catalyzed additional introductions, and then it just kind of snowballs. And pretty soon you're like, I have too many meetings to keep up with. There's not enough hours in the day. And we had to split up. But just start, I think key thing is just get started with somebody that you know and trust, that you like, that you think has a reasonable respect level for you, and then ask them for their quick advice on what are your next steps and other introductions, as it were. And I would say certainly at some point, it is reasonable to compensate people for their advice, especially in a more formal, bigger capacity. But it's also reasonable for a while to just ask for free advice for a long time. I don't think you have to jump right to compensation. And even some of my best advisors, like Desh Deshpande, who is a super successful entrepreneur and avid advisor, he used to always tell me, like, the people that ask you for money early on are the least valuable advisors, and you should steer clear of them. And I think there's some truth in that. Of course, again, it is reasonable to compensate people at times, so I wouldn't say never do it. But if people in the first meeting are saying, this is how much I'm going to charge and how much equity I want, then probably they're not that good, right? Like, the people that you want are the ones that are so successful. They don't really care about the money, and they're doing it because they love the game and they want to help you, and they love the enthusiasm and excitement for it. And so I learned a lot. I mean, Desh was one of my best ever advisors, and that was a good piece of advice from him. So look for people that really are passionate and love it and get excited the way that you do. And again, it's easier. It's a different game. You can play it many different ways. But as an extrovert, I played a numbers game and talked to like literally 1,000 people to find 10 that I really adored, which is a lot of work, and it isn't for everybody. But I would say at least like play the field a little bit, and then pick a few that you really resonate with from there.
I'll just add, if you're doing it through LinkedIn, be specific, right? Be specific on what you want. Don't just write, will you mentor me, or let's grab coffee, okay? It's not enough. Just say, expectations. Why did you reach out? What do you want? How I can be helpful to you? I always ask people when I meet with them, how will it be a good meeting for you? How will define it as a good meeting? What will be the outcome in the end? And I think this is where you try to help, not just meeting people out for coffee, because then you won't have enough, time of the day to do that. So be very specific on why you reached out, what do you want to get out of it. And I feel people value that. Be honest, be direct, be exactly, say exactly what you want out of the mentor. Yeah, and also later on, like you said, you don't just want them for free, you want them to be invested, right?
Yeah.
You probably want people to see them on the cap table, because then you're sure that maybe not from day one, but they are committed to, to the startups, to the program, and not just, another title on a founder presentation. Here's my advisory board.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a key point, like Desh used to say, there was 3 things that you can get out of advisors: wealth, wisdom, and work. Right. And ideally you get at least 2 of those 3 things from each member on your board of advisors, or those that you're willing to compensate and build a long-term relationship with. But so they could either invest or donate if it's a nonprofit, or they could provide you just really good insight, or they're willing to do work and actually draft documents for you, make introductions, sit with you and work out strategy and stuff like that. It's just a simple, easy framework to think about of what you're looking for out of that person.
I'll just add to exactly what you said, and don't commit early. It's harder to
Yes.
get people out of your cap table
yeah,
than
yeah.
getting them in. And I see it all the time, even for founders coming to me and say, hey, we want you on the advisory board, we're going to give you percentage. I'm like, wait, I haven't even bring you any value. Why do you want to do that? It's your cap table. Wait with it.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
that's a note that I totally agree with you guys.
I agree. Usually by the time you get to a couple years in, you've got advisors who you may not have spoken to since a year and a half ago. It happens to everyone. It happens to the best of us. That's why there's vesting. But I think that's very true. Probably in the first 3 months or so, you're not even really talking about money. But if it's valuable to have people on the cap table, you really should. And if they're at a level that you think will improve recognition for your company, or they're just very good in the space that you're in, I mean, it's definitely worth considering.
Yes.
I think there's a big difference too between cash and options compensation. So there are a lot of folks who are looking for, a job, frankly, and are going to ask for cash compensation. And there's nothing wrong with that if they're doing the work and you want to pay them in cash, if that's what you have. But when you're an early stage startup, what you have more of usually at the beginning is equity. And finding people who are motivated by equity, I think, is so much more valuable to a startup than people who are motivated by cash. And that will probably be true even for employees and people all the way down the line. Like, people should genuinely, when they're negotiating with you as employees, if they don't show interest in the equity portion of the equation, they're probably not there for the right reason. Same thing for mentors. They should really be looking for equity, not necessarily cash. That's my
I would love to build on that a little bit. So what for the mentors, before they hit the point of being compensated, what is in it for them? What is the value add? Let me start with you.
Love of the game. I think love of the game. You're getting, a front seat of building something, without being there for the full time. And I think and also paying back. Most of the time I was a founder before, and people helped me building my company. People around me really helped me with the ecosystem, open doors. And I feel like this is something that people also love, to be part of something, and help founders when they're doing their first steps. I think this is something that people, just love. Build.
Yeah, I agree. It's like launching a startup is exhilarating. It's also terrifying, right? And I mean, it's like the most terrifying and horrible thing you'll ever do, but it's also the best way you can express yourself in the world of business. So it is, and so you miss it as you get older. You no longer have, and sort of more established, you no longer really have the capacity to go and launch something new in the same way, or it just becomes too challenging, too difficult. And so you really want to relive that through somebody else vicariously. And that means that, which is important, because it means as the entrepreneur, you got to bring that passion to the equation. You got to re-spark that excitement, and that creative enthusiasm is a super important part of it, is that, so they're getting a lot of excitement, enthusiasm. They have a lot that they can add, but they can't really live it in their own life in the same way. So I think that is super important. And then again, I think this comes down to asking them each individually what's in it sort of for you, and what do you value in life, what gets you excited, and it will be a little bit different for each of them. But some of them just like to flex their strategic muscles. They're really, really, really smart, and they love to apply their intelligence to difficult problems. Some of them, just have this great network and community that they want to share with the world, with other great smart people. So it will vary a little bit, but a lot of it is just living vicariously through the entrepreneur.
Yeah, you can't do every idea you think of, and I think a lot of people who do multiple startups, like we all have, are addicts to the game, and they really enjoy seeing the business ideas. They really enjoy learning new things. I mean, my last couple startups, cryptography, quantum computing, neuroscience, subjects I knew nothing about the day I met the entrepreneur, or knew very little about. So I get to learn all of this subject matter while passing on knowledge about how to get from day 0 to 2 years in. And I think, for most mentors, they just enjoy it. A lot of the more seasoned mentors are generally at a stage of their career where they don't want to overly commit. And so they may only meet with you, unpaid, whatever, for several months, because they don't really want the hanging over their head, I have to do this, it's a job now. They like to do it, and they enjoy it, and to some degree, the money takes the enjoyment out of it. So
I just want to add that you also get out of it as well, because you're exposed to new innovation.
yeah.
Okay. You're exposed to new innovation and new talent, right? Think about, I remember Neil Young playing with Pearl Jam, right? That's the case. You said old people, but it's like, you don't have the time, you don't have the capacity to start a startup, but you can also, experiment with AI by that. And you can also work with great new founders and great new talent, and build something with them. And I feel like it's not just giving back, but you're also getting a lot of it from it. Sorry.
That's great. So we've talked about some pitfalls that founders might run into when bringing on mentors, offering compensation a little too early. What are other common pitfalls that you've that you've observed, and how would you recommend that folks avoid those? And maybe John, I'll start with you for that one.
Sure. So I think that one of the things is if people are, if people approach you with a lot of greed and are immediately demanding huge equity or compensation, like that's sort of an obvious red flag, but I would be careful. It's not that common, so I wouldn't worry too dramatically about it, but there are sort of bad people out there that will try to abuse you and take advantage. Not a lot, but so that's one obvious red flag. I think the other element that you'll see is where I found it very valuable to talk to lots of different advisors and not just one or two, is that not everybody, look, this is hard to do. To launch a startup successfully is incredibly high risk and low odds of success. And so nobody really has all the answers. And if you're getting all of your feedback and input and advice from one person, they're probably wrong half the time. So if you have 10 people, you can sort of take a poll and average it out. And if all 10 of them say that you should definitely do step A, then they're probably right. If you get 5 different answers with 2 people in each group, then you have to decide either which of those people are the smartest on this topic and the best, or it's dealer's choice. You get to decide. But I think I found it to be very important because you will find not only different pieces of advice, but often opposite pieces of advice from people that you trust and believe in. So that is also, I think, a risk, is that people will take you down a rabbit hole that suits their interests and needs, but doesn't necessarily suit yours. So I find it very valuable, again, to get a balance of different opinions. And at the end of the day, recognize you own your company. You are the one that loses the most if it doesn't go well. Everybody on the sidelines is just giving advice. So definitely listen, and if they're smart and it resonates with you, then take their advice. But you have to be the decision maker at the end. Don't allow them to sort of overwhelm you and coerce you into actions that are not in your interest. I think that's probably the key thing in my mind.
You can definitely get advice whiplash, talking to different people and having them give you 180-degree opposite opinions just based on what they know. So it is important to synthesize and think about why they say what they say based on what their background is, and that may be more informative than actually the piece of advice they gave you. And I would add, a giant green flag to me for mentorship is operators, somebody who has started a company before, because it's a difficult thing to start a company, and the weight that's on the head of a CEO is something that if you haven't experienced it for yourself, if you haven't had to fundraise before, if you haven't had to almost run out of money before, if you haven't had to, hire people you barely know and it's when you have no time, all of that stuff matters, and it enriches the advice that somebody's going to give you. So I find it much more meaningful in a lot of ways for mentors to have walked the same path and have fought through the same struggles as an entrepreneur themselves.
And I would also add, from observing some of the folks coming through our programs, sort of ties back to knowing what you need. I think also being explicit with your mentor about what it is you're looking for. I've seen some startups come back and say, well, they didn't do XYZ thing for me. And I say, like, did you ask them to do XYZ thing? So I think not expecting them to be mind readers as well. So I want to kind of turn to thinking about folks coming out of colleges and universities. And Shireen, maybe I'll start with you for this one. What special opportunities do people who are currently enrolled in college have to reach out cold to people in hopes of building and advising our mentorship relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of notes. I went to Sloan as well, and I get a lot of notes from Sloanies of the last decade who are starting their first company. And honestly, when I get those, or people who are reaching out for some other reason that we have something in common, I really enjoy getting those. But the schools themselves have a lot of resources set aside for entrepreneurs because they're very interested in having their entrepreneurs succeed. So they set up entrepreneur in residence programs. They set up, funds that go alongside the university. So I think almost every university in Boston has an entrepreneurship center, and that entrepreneurship center generally has at least a dozen senior mentors signed up for various programs that they offer that you should check out. And these are all things that you can get for free. Universities also often have legal office hours, which can be the most expensive thing to spend your money on, and the biggest savings when you can get an hour of a lawyer's time for free just to tell you you're not screwing something up, or that you don't need a lawyer for X, Y, or Z. There's just, BU, Tufts, Northeastern especially, MIT, HBS, like all of the schools around here have really well-funded, dedicated programs to help success.
Yep, I would second that. I think that's the right thing to do is start with the entrepreneurship center, find also often like specific professors that you really, bond with that are in the right subject. They will have advice for you on who else to talk to, or they'll be good advisors and support structures themselves. Then there's, not just your own university, but all of the other universities, as Shireen mentioned. Almost all of those events are open to the broad public. You can just walk in. So just scour the web, look for who's running events on which date. It's even easier with ChatGPT or other, Gen AI systems. You can just ask them where are there startup events in my area in the next month, and it's like pretty detailed. And just go to events. Mass Challenge runs events that are largely open to the public. Almost all of the events are free or $10 or something like that to go to, and then just start going to them, and you'll find some events you like, some you don't. You meet lots of people, you don't meet people, and then just keep going to the ones that you like. It really is just getting started, and then using that initial, beachhead to just snowball into 5 other people that you meet, 5 other, and pretty soon it is, I think that Boston is not that big of an ecosystem. So there's like maybe a little bit of an eggshell to break through at the very beginning, but once you get in and know a few people, it seems like you know hundreds of people very, very quickly, and especially as a university student. The other thing that I would say is, that I think Shireen sort of highlighted briefly is cold outreach in general doesn't work. Like if I just get random outreach from people on LinkedIn or otherwise, I'm overwhelmed. I get so many of those that it's really hard to distinguish. But if it's somebody who has at a minimum an affinity, like I went to Sloan or I went to Bowdoin undergrad, if they have something in common that helps a little bit. Even better is if Shireen makes the intro to me and says, "Oh, this is somebody that I know that I think you would really like meeting," then that warm intro I take almost every single time. So, and it's not that hard to find somebody that we know in common. So try to make the effort, and this also shows that you cared enough to research each of the people you're reaching out to, and you're not just blasting 1,000 people in the hopes that some of them will respond. So I think warm outreach is super important. Find somebody you know in common or something you have in common, or I saw your video and I really liked what you said about XYZ. At least demonstrate you put some effort in, and that is a really key step to getting the sort of initial introduction.
Also, there's the formal stuff that you talked about with the mentors, how to build the startups and so on, but there's also the informal of like office hours with professors, even if they're not your professors. Like I went to an office hour of a Nobel Prize winning economy of education professor because I had a question. That was great. He wasn't my professor. He wasn't offered in any entrepreneurship program, but I wanted to validate the problem, not the solution, the problem. And I feel like this is also something that you as a student can actually look, if you have problems, if you have issues, if you have stuff that you want to validate, look at the professors out there and their office hours and write to them that you're studying and this faculty and so on, and you want to come to their office hours. Usually they will say, yeah, come over and have a chat with us. And I use that a lot because this is part of the research and everything that you have that MIT and Harvard can offer you. Which is great, and it's more than the just formal like how to build a startup. I think it's going back to the validation of the problems a lot of the time, and some of them even were like innovators and they created startups of their own and so on. So use that as well.
There are 2 more kind of aspects that I want to touch on before we open it up to Q&A. And the first one is sort of maintaining these relationships once you've established a relationship with an advisor or a mentor. What practices do you think contribute to sustaining kind of a beneficial, productive relationship, particularly as your company evolves? And Yossi, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure. First of all, be honest. If you're going and speak to a person, be honest with your issues, with your problems. We're not here to just hear, oh, everything is awesome. Even when we invest in a company, you don't want to for them to say everything is great, everything is awesome. If people want your help and people want to chat with you, we expect them to be honest. And I think it's vice versa. Like you're going to be honest with them as well, on the hard problems, on what you see in their path and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really important also to demonstrate you are listening and hearing their feedback. Even if you don't agree with it 100%, that's okay. You can be honest and straightforward with them, but demonstrating that you have that you are following through on your commitments and your promises. Each meeting you should come back, each subsequent meeting you should come back with something new done. Right? I always want to hear, and ideally something positive, but it's also okay if you're like, well, I attempted to do X, Y, Z, and it didn't work out because of ABC. That's okay, but just have like a good update that demonstrates I am working, I am trying, because among the worst things is just like, I don't have the time to meet once a month to just talk about ideas and nothing actually happens. Like, I'm only interested if we're actually doing something, if there's actually outcomes that are happening. And so, again, I think understanding each of the advisors' interests and demonstrating to them that you are executing towards their goals is very, very valuable. Often I find, helping their other mentees, their children potentially, their other colleagues and friends, like just demonstrating goodwill and that there's positive momentum and that there's something in it for them to stay engaged with you, instead of just like you're rambling incoherently about ideas every month, that you'll lose them very quickly. So just sort of demonstrating forward progress, commitment, and goodwill is always like a good step. And another final thing is, I would say, even just quick touch points. Maybe you don't need their help, but just like occasional updates, nice and brief, not like a 17-page, here's everything I did in the month, but just like, hey, just wanted to let you know we're progressing, things are going great, I closed this customer, I'm struggling to make this hire, don't need to chat just yet, but I'll be back in touch in a month, just so you stay top of mind and you don't disappear for 9 months at a time, is also actually very valuable. I struggle with that sometimes, but that's actually a very valuable trick that I learned from some of the people on my team, to just stay top of mind so you don't disappear completely.
Yeah, I think underneath what you were saying was also setting up a regular cadence of talking to them, or setting expectations about how often you'll touch base. Some people are once a month, some people are once a quarter, depending on how much time they have and the kind of thing you're talking about. So if it's, they're helping you out to think about your fundraise and helping you with your pitch deck, you might meet with them like 3 times in a month. For other people, you might only reach out to them once a quarter, give them a short update, and ask for a specific answer to a specific type of question. And the other thing underneath what you were saying, or that I'd like to underline to, is just the emails and the communications with your mentors and advisors need to be brief. And that's one thing I always work with founders on, because you really want to tell your whole story in the way that you want to tell it, but that's not the way that people want to receive it necessarily. And trying to keep things to 2 short paragraphs, 4 or 5 sentences total. Nobody reads more than that in an email. Think about how much of an email you would be willing to receive and read through, and cut that in half for your audience. And that's pretty much as much as you can write them in an email. If you have more than a few sentences to say to them, schedule 15 minutes. And the other thing is, don't be embarrassed to schedule 15 minutes instead of a half hour or an hour. People who are very busy often dread hour-long meetings or can't take them. But 15 minutes is something almost everybody has in between stuff. And so I want to popularize the 15-minute meeting, because it can be much more helpful to get 15 minutes than to be told, no, I don't have an hour till next month.
The piece that I want to end with is, before we open to Q&A, is just hearing from you on any advice that you received from a mentor, or a quote, or kind of a takeaway that you got that still kind of rattles around in your head.
Mistakes are your greatest mentors is the thing that a mentor once told me. And I'm like, as a serial entrepreneur, I 100% believe that.
I'll give 2 brief ones. They weren't like, a lot of them are not necessarily monumental, huge, grand pieces of universal wisdom, but they're just problems that you're stuck on that somebody solves so crisply and cleanly. So I remember early on at Mass Challenge, we were innovating all sorts of things, and like this is like pre-crypto era, but basically inventing how do we create a token to reward mentors for engaging with other startups and all of these other things. And one of my mentors was just like, maybe you don't have to innovate on every aspect of the business. Like maybe some of it can be regular and you can just have a few innovations. And that was like a huge, like game-changing way for us to look at it. And then another one that's is really simple, and I felt stupid for it, but it's a good clarification of just how easily people can solve your problems for you. Sometimes I had worked, when we're running our award ceremony at Mass Challenge, we're getting too big for the room that we were using at the convention center. So we had about 2,000 people we could fit in there, and we had, interest from 2,500, 3,000 people to attend. We're like, we're going to run out of tickets. We need a bigger room. And Josh Boger, who was on my board, was like, no, John, didn't you go to business school? You just have to raise prices. It's a supply and demand problem. And I was like, holy shit, why did I not think of that? That is like so obvious. But sometimes they just have like clarity.
I think sometimes you want people that believe in you, sometimes even more than you believe in yourself. I think this is truly important, especially in a startup where it's a roller coaster. People that will lift you up and say, it's okay, you can do it. This is what I see in you, and here's, you'll figure this out. And sometimes that's enough. And I had this one mentor that is also a friend that I feel brings it in, to the table a lot of the time.
Love that. So we want to open it up for questions, and maybe just to get a sense of who's in the room asking some of these questions. How many of you are mentors, by show of hands? Awesome. And how many of you are potentially looking for mentorship? We'll use this to seed some of sow some of the seeds of networking later. Okay, perfect. So who would like to ask a question? Maybe we would start with this in the front row. And I think, do we have a microphone for her? Amazing.
Hi, everyone. Hello, my name is Anshul. I am a Sloan MBA recently and just launched our company on Delta V Demo Day 2 days ago on maternal care. Question, very basic. What is the basic difference between an advisor and a mentor? And how can we bring value to the mentor or advisors as founders?
I can start. Mentors are usually for a different set of issues, maybe like strategic or personal. I always think of advisor, like when you get to advisor, I always think of it as being more formal. Like that's when you start thinking about, okay, is this going to be a relationship with the company as opposed to me personally? So I think, I don't know, there's probably a lot of ways to cut it.
I'm not sure that there is a formal, officially accepted definitional difference between them per se, but I have a similar kind of perspective as Shireen. So maybe that's the conventional accepted wisdom, is that a mentor to me is almost not necessarily sort of spiritual, but it's kind of a personal, like a guide for you as a human being and how do I think through my life, and that can apply to your business as well. But in my mind, that is a longer term, more personal relationship. And then an advisor could be just on a specific specialized topic, like I need an advisor for pricing, or I need an advisor for a specific topic. But I also agree that in the business sense, that you typically call it your board of advisors, and that there is often a formal structure of like, this is business advice. To me, in my head, it's more of a topical value that they're providing, whereas a mentor is somebody who cares about you as a person and a human in a slightly different layer. I'm not sure that's exactly correct, but that's how I think of it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I feel like mentor is something that has more personal stuff into it rather than advisors. Like it's not about advisors. How about you do your startup? Where mentor is, why did you choose to be a founder in the first place, right? How this path and talking to you about that. So.
Ian back here.
Hi, Louis Berlin. Thank you all for coming out and speaking. I learned a lot from listening to all of you. I'm a mentor. I'm one of the guys who raised the hands on mentor thing, but I'm also a coach, a very high-end coach. And I want to disagree with what John said first out about going in and asking to be paid up front. I will not do anything where I'm not paid up front. Sometimes it's by money, but often it's by learning from the people I'm mentoring. I tend to only mentor people who I think are smarter than me, more dedicated than me, and people who I wish I was when I was 20 years old.
Great.
Maybe we'll take some folks in the back corner here.
Hi, I'm Chris. My question is about how you guys think about mentoring diverse individuals. I think anecdotally, I went to Harvard Law School. When I graduated, there were 30 kids in a class of 600 that were Black. Most of them went on to big law where there weren't Black partners there, and they suffer tremendously in terms of mentorship because that enables them to climb the corporate ladder. I ended up being a public defender, so that didn't really matter. But in terms of like the VC world and startups, there are very few Black people like in the room. And just in networking events here in Boston in general. So I wonder, do you guys have diverse mentees, and do you think about that actively?
I think about that a lot. am usually mentoring women, although I've mentored a lot of men. But I came up at a time where there were really no women in banking. When I started in financial services, no women to really mentor me in banking. And I actually met my first woman mentor in banking probably 15 years ago, not that long ago in a relative sense. I really couldn't focus on having women as mentors or having or focus on a particular race and ethnicity at that time. And I just found eliminating that criteria and maybe finding mentors that don't look like you. I don't think mentors necessarily have to. I think some mix of your mentors should, and that's a difficult thing. I think the good news is there are starting to be venture capital firms that are centered on Black entrepreneurs. I would seek them out. I've sought out to improve my deal flow and diversify it as an angel. I've sought out VCs who focus on minority communities, and they are 100% always willing to have a conversation. So I think that's a good place to start. They often have office hours, and they make great sponsors, and they're very good about networking, the ones I've spoken with. I don't know if you have more.
It's a great question, and it is a real challenge. So yes, we do both. But there's three of us in our fund, and the other partner and our senior associate are both female, and so we do make a specific effort. We have 25% of our investments are in female founders, and it is a real struggle. I see it in just our meetings with my partner, who is smarter, better looking, and more interesting than me, and will be in charge of certain aspects. And yet, when we are speaking with outsiders, they very often look to me for the answer, and I'm like, that's not my job. She's better. She's the appropriate person to answer that question. So there is like a very real bias in the system, and so I think it is a challenge for non-diverse individuals to mentor diverse individuals who have a different set of struggles. So I do make a conscious effort to try to help, nevertheless, I do agree that it's challenging. At Mass Challenge, we did explicitly identify this as a problem, and one of the challenges is that, as you noted, that you are faced with this sort of historically biased system, which means there aren't as many people of diverse backgrounds that are in positions of leadership and success and authority. And so you have fewer mentors to draw from to support a very large pool of incoming, talented young entrepreneurs that deserve that mentorship. So I think Shireen's right that you will have to look to mentors that are not necessarily of the same background and don't look exactly the same, and will be lacking in some skills and knowledge and capabilities that will be necessary, which is an added burden and challenge in what is already a difficult field. So, but I do think there are more and more people that are willing and interested and excited to help. And there are funds that are specifically devoted for it, and many individuals. And increasingly, society hopefully is trending more towards a better mix, maybe not all the time, and it's very, up and down, but I do hope that improves over time, and I do think, people are increasingly committed to try to solve that problem, but it remains a challenge.
I'll take some folks in this corner. We do.
Hi, I'm Rohit. Are there certain qualities in founders that you look for before agreeing to come on board as advisor or mentor?
Did you hear that?
It's so hard to pin down, and I'm sure for the VCs it'll be an interesting response. But it's very hard to pin down those attributes, but it's usually underlain by an energy to solve a problem. So they're excited by the problem, they're willing to throw themselves at it, they are 100% enthusiastic about just solving a particular problem, and they know what that problem is and can say it in a sentence. So that's generally what I'm looking for when I'm trying to work with the founder. I'm trying to figure out how I can be helpful. So usually the second thing I'm looking for is, let me know, like, I'm not saying it is to be nice, I'm just saying, let me know how I can be helpful, because I want to target the conversation to the topics that are most useful to you. So I think coming in, like, showing your energy and passion for a problem, and also having a specific ask that's appropriate of the mentor is a really great way to get started. It's definitely something I look for.
Yeah, I think I have a similar answer. And I think it will vary for each mentor, so it's not exactly the same across the board. But in general, for me also, it is passion, commitment, grit. Like I really like to see that they are unreasonably attached to their idea and the outcomes that they're targeting, and that they are committed and will take action. There's nothing worse than having a meeting where you discuss things, you come back and have another meeting, it's the same discussion, and you're like, did nothing happen? Like I thought you were committed to actually making a change in the world. I'm not as interested in just whiteboard sessions. I'm really interested in seeing somebody that is like almost addicted to just execution and getting stuff done all the time. And then I feel like, okay, I can help here and there, but you're gonna be an independent actor that's gonna go and get stuff done on your own. That I think is a really attractive characteristic in the founder from my perspective.
I'm also looking for people that I can learn from, that I feel like they're doing something because they're passionate about it, but they know about it, and I'm not necessarily know everything about it, and I can learn from them as well. And I feel like this is what I look like, people that looking for a mentor, but you want to build it as a partnership, and they're willing to take you as a partner into their journey. Not working your path, but actually creating their path based on your perspectives. This is what I would look for.
You do. This gentleman in the white shirt. I think white shirt. I can't totally see. Yeah.
Thank you. Hopefully a quick question. So it's around getting mentors or advisors within the field or the market that you're sort of building in. And if I could give a little background. So I've sort of built a tool around helping board meetings for nonprofits sort of run better. And I've reached out to a lot of board facilitators to help sort of build this out. A couple of them have shown a lot of interest in sort of being involved. And one in particular, I want to have them involved in terms of more outreach, but they have some real thoughts about the product in terms of building that out. And we're clashing a little bit on that. I'm curious about sort of your thoughts on just working with people in your market versus people with business savvy in general, and how to deal with those sort of disagreements.
Clashing or brainstorming? That was the main question. You were brainstorming with him, or you were clashing about the product?
Kind of clash, I mean, clashing maybe a strong word, but yeah, he has some ideas. He wants to add some things to the product, and I'm like, that's.
But I feel like this is the thing. Like, will you listen to him? And he also needs to listen to you, right? Not just making sure that you're following his steps and advices. And I feel like this is the thing. And this is what I think you need to frame for yourself. Is it the right is he the right mentor for you because of that?
I think that the arguments show that this person actually cares about what you're doing and isn't just there to validate you and make you feel good. And you never, if you've made what I always agree with founders, if you've made your best argument, if I've made my best argument, give me 15 minutes, listen to what I have to say. If we don't agree, we have to disagree and move on. And that's always a good thing as a founder to have as a key principle. You're going to have lots of different opinions coming to you, but often you'll have to disagree and keep moving. But for the people who disagree with you, keep in mind that they care, they've thought about the problem, and they care enough to tell you the truth as they see it, and they know you're not going to like it. And that costs them more. So I guess for me, if I was looking for a mentor, I would definitely look for somebody who doesn't tell me what I want to hear all the time. And that's an important trait.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it can be. So I prefer to have lots of different types of personalities as well as different skill sets and mentors around me. So probably the best mentors I've ever had don't tell me what to do, but just ask a lot of questions, and they help me to realize what I already know that I haven't fully externalized or sort of properly identified. Like Desh was like that. He was incredible. He only ever asked questions, and it was frustrating because at times I'd be like, can you just tell me what to do? Just tell me, just say the answer and I'll do it. But he was like, he refused to. But then I had some mentors like Josh Boger, who was very opinionated and would tell me all the time what to do. And it was super frustrating and difficult, but he was also almost always right. Not always, but almost always right. So, and I think the key is, so I think to Shreen's point, the fact that they have an opinion is probably a good sign. But there is a line at which you're like, all right, now you're being stubborn and obstinate and not actually working together in a collaborative way. And that's kind of the key question I think you got to get to. is to what point are they trying to sort of take over your dream and your goal? And at the end of the day, you're the entrepreneur. You need to make the decisions and own those decisions and be comfortable with them. You should listen to them, especially if they're smart and you respect them. So probably you both need to ask each other more questions about, like, why do you believe that? What is the goal that you're trying to accomplish with that? What is the benefit that we're not otherwise getting through it? And I would just say really deeply understand that perspective, and then you have to decide if you think it's right for you or not. But isn't necessarily a deal breaker. Could be if they're just unwilling to listen and be collaborative, but also good to have difficult people around you sometimes.
I'm Kevin. Thank you for your time. The thought crossed my mind about like AI and can like if you don't have a great mentor, can AI kind of substitute and what type of questions would you recommend? Like I'm not even one of those. It's just tip of the tongue nowadays. So what I'm saying is, if you had like some questions that your mentees ask you, could you share some of those maybe? And then also, I'm sure like we could use AI to find like a list of like potential mentors as well. But like, what type of questions, if we're going about it by ourselves, would you?
I think that was a South Park episode last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to catch that one because it makes the point very, very well that it's very comforting to be able to have ChatGPT or something else like right at your fingertips to ask questions. And there are a lot of good answers out there, but ChatGPT isn't a human who's had those experiences that aren't recorded. It can only give you answers based on what it's seen and knows. And the kind of seasoning and ability to pivot and all of that a real mentor brings to the table is always going to have value. I think there are a lot of times you don't need an expert in the room. You just need to know what have other people done to approach this problem. And I think figuring out what other people have done to approach the problem and having ChatGPT run around to find that information for you is great. But like, you don't want something that's just going to validate you back and that sort of thing. And definitely watch the South Park episode. Yeah.
So I think it's a great question, actually. And I do think like over time, it will get better and better. And you'll get digital twins of specific people so you could get like at least insight into what type of advice they might give you. I don't think yet right now that it's a full substitute, but it definitely can make you much more efficient in your engagement and interactions. And a lot of questions around just like market sizing and market segmentation and which types of customers might be interested in how, what other competitors exist in pricing and other sorts of things like that that are sort of more factual and based on information that's available on the web. It can radically reduce the amount of time you have to spend to go research that and instead put it at your fingertips. And that will make you better suited to go and approach a mentor. So you could use it as kind of a pre-session to help sort of build your ideas and make yourself a little bit smarter so that you're not overlooking the obvious insights that are out there. But I agree that I don't think it is as valuable as a human who's got deeper experience and has done this for a long time. Because honestly, the biggest challenges of running a business are almost all about human interactions, right? So, and it is much better suited for actual factual information, even though it hallucinates. But like it is better suited for gathering that type of data than it is about like understanding the personal dynamics and things. So definitely a good tool, and I would integrate and use it, but I don't think it's a replacement just yet, at least for human mentors.
Yeah, if only because founders and entrepreneurs tend to have such unique personalities and are always surrounded by people with these like unique and sort of offbeat personalities. Things aren't going to resonate exactly the same way as it is for the average of the population, which is what ChatGPT is really tuned towards.
Are we out of time?
Sorry, I have to end our session now, but on that note, so I want to give a huge thank you to our speakers. Thank you so much. What personally resonated for me was the love of the game. That's why I'm here all week, and living vicariously now that I'm not sure that I want to work 80 hours a week on a passion project. I get to live vicariously through some of the younger folks coming up with these great ideas. So with that, we have a lot in store for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. As I mentioned earlier, we have a welcome party right in this room presented by HPE and NVIDIA, and that'll be at 6:30. We have lunch, so I know you want to mingle in the room, but as much as you can, move out so we can reset for the 1 o'clock session after lunch. It's not as critical given that we have a little bit of extra time. Let's see. If you're with us virtually, you don't need to go anywhere. Just choose your next session, and we'll be back with you shortly. I did want to mention that Kevin Ty from 3 Circle Studios is our official photographer. So if you grab him for a photo, you'll actually get a personalized album. I keep getting texts that saying, "You've been seen again, you've been seen again." It's really kind of fun. So if you want to join that, find Kevin. And I think that's it. We'll see you at the next session at 1 o'clock. And again, I know our panelists will get bombarded up here with questions. As much as you can kind of move those out, and we'll see you at 1 for the next session. Thank you.
Well done, guys. Nice. That was fun.
Thank you.
Your voice is like really soothing.
Oh, that's nice. What a nice thing to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for jumping in.
Yeah, of course. Happy
It's
to.
so great listening to you talk about these things. I haven't talked to you in such a long
I know
time
it's been a
about
while.
all
We should
this.
get together sometime for coffee. or something.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very interested in what you're doing and how